Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the February edition of Molten Music Monthly. Did you know I've been doing this for 7 years? 7 years. That's a long old time. That's a lot of monthlies. That's a lot of gear to talk about. A lot of ideas and opinions put forward. I'd just really like to say thank you so much for watching and continuing to watch and to support my channel and these weird and overlong news and gear reports. It's the reason I get out of bed in the morning. So thank you very much for that. And I would like to commit here and now to changing the intro, because it's been the same. It has been the same for 7 years. The intro bit of video is not quite that old, something in the region of 5 years, but it's no longer representative of exactly what it is that I do, and so it's probably about time to move on. So this month I'm going to do that. That's my commitment. I'm going to redo it. I might even redo the music, although I really like the music. It's just so joyful. I like the idea of coming into this whole thing with this, this skipping a step and a sense of enthusiasm and optimism, which is really hard to find these days, I think. And of course, my heart and my best wishes goes out to our friends in the Ukraine at this awful time that's happening to you. And I sincerely hope it's brought to a very swift and good end. Well, anyway, what do we have coming up this month? Well, ST Modular are chasing lights. British Noise are cascading FETs. 1010 Music are starting a sweet shop. Sinevibes has a 15-minute reverb. Genki has entered the Cosmos. Presonus wants to help you capture stuff with little boxes. Wavefonix releases another lovely looking modular system. UVI Vintage Vault gives you everything. EuroPi faces up to the Consequencer. That doesn't really work. Teenage Engineering modularizes its modular. Cables get a portal. Cardinal gives you VCV Rack as a VST plugin for free. Hainbach releases some noise. RecoSynth goes with an attaché case. Voltage Vibes turns the Matriarch back to front. Gforce gets Tom Oberheim's seal of approval. Look Mum No Computer's got an enormous sequencer. And car makers Kia release a virtual instrument. But first, Superbooth is back. Be super, they say. Be super. Superbooth 22 is happening in May in Fez, Berlin. From Thursday the 12th to Saturday the 14th, I believe it is. Everyone's going to be there. We're all going to be there because this COVID thing doesn't seem to matter anymore. So we're all just going to go along and have a lovely time. As I understand it, Superbooth is going to continue with this idea of being inside and outside, of spreading itself over the entire area with tents and marquees and little bungalows and sheds and performance spaces and food, vans and stuff. It just sounds fabulous. It's like the best thing, the best thing ever. And so the hope is that all the manufacturers will be there. There'll be tons and tons of Eurorack, tons of synthesizers, all that kind of stuff. They've also joined themselves with this guitar boutique, guitar maker kind of festival as well. So you've got all that going on at the same time in the same place, which is fascinating. But it's great to see it up and running again this year, and I can't wait to go. My own personal plan is probably just to drop in on the Saturday. That tends to be how I handle it, because I have to kind of cover it as a journalist in the other days, and you can't really do that while you're walking around a festival, I find. So you'll probably find me there, hopefully, all being well, on the Saturday. So come and say hello. That would be great. Anyway, lots to get through today, so I won't dawdle. I won't just hang around on anything in particular. I'll just get straight on with things. Straight on with it. What's next? ST Modular chasing lights. ST Modular, love ST Modular. They make lots and lots and lots, always new stuff coming out. And the genius behind what they do is that they only release the front panel and PCB and say, ha-ha, so you have to go and find the components yourself. which you of course have to do. Or if you can find a third party who will put it together as a kit, then so much the better. But otherwise, you've got to build the thing, you've got to find the parts, but from their point of view, all they've got to do is come up with an idea, produce a PCB front panel, put one together, and then boom, they don't really care after that. It's all done and they're moving on to the next thing. So the result of that is that they've got this huge range of stuff coming along, and all of it looks brilliant and seems to do interesting things. This one is called Chasing Lights, and what it gives you is 3 channels of drum trigger programming. Doesn't have to be drums, of course, but it's 3 levels of analog 8-step sequencing, which can also do interesting channel chaining and clock divisioning. There's a bunch of shenanigans going on with summing outputs and sequence lengths and stuff like that, but do go and check it out. It looks fascinating. I like the whole idea of chasing lights about the place and how that sort of blends into concepts of percussive and drum related jiggery pokery. British Noise Electronics have got a cascading FET, 4 channels of FETness, FET amplification, crunchy J-FET saturation, cascading from one channel into another. So you start off with kind of that little bit of warmth, that little bit of gooiness that then folds over into a little bit of sort of fatness, which folds over into a bit of gnarliness, which folds over into something just disastrous. I imagine there's 4 channels of this. You can treat them individually, or you can, as it says, cascade one into the other for creating the most saturated, the most, nail-biting sound of amplified signals running through your Eurorack. You can take outputs at different points, so you could take like a sound which is just slightly gooey and then take it a couple bits later, which is then destroyed and crushed into something else. So it's very good at creating a blend of different sort of sounds from the similar input. It's great, it's crunchy, and it has those wonderful LEDs behind those grills. I mean, put an LED behind a grill and you automatically think this thing is going to bite your head off. It has this angry vibe. I mean, even though there are no real valves in there's no fire actually going on, it's just an LED behind a grill, and it just feels dangerous. And British Noise Electronics are experts at making their modules look dangerous, but the look is superb. That whole Neve thing going on, it's great. I really enjoy the filter of theirs that I have, and if I was in need of some distortion, then this is definitely something I would consider. 1010 Music make interesting little boxes, and their latest ones are spectacular in colour and in form. We have the Lemon Drop and we have the Fireball. Like I say, it's a bit like they've opened a sweet shop, but within this sweet shop we have the Lemon Drop, which is granular. See, that's the sign for granular. And we have the Fireball, which is wavetable. Is that wavetable? Is that wavetable? I don't know. Table wave. Doesn't matter. I think I might have... These 7 years are weighing heavily on my mind at the moment, and I think I'm just kind of losing it. Anyway, the Lemon Drop is a granular synthesizer built into this quite adorable little package with a couple of knobs and a touchscreen. That's all you get, and you're playing with granular synthesis within there. Exactly the same form factor, but in bright red for the Fireball wavetable version, which gives you a little bit of control over morphing those wavetables like you would expect. And on the granular one, you've got scanning and granular depth and that kind of thing. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. It's just giving you a useful, high quality sound source in a very small package. They are both polyphonic. They have 2 multi-mode filters built into envelopes and LFO, a whole stack of effects. So just on their own, they sound pretty good. I mean, it sounds like a complete package. Tiny, adorable, cute, zesty little package. The little touchscreen interface is probably not going to be for everybody, but then they're probably not targeted at everybody. And at the price of €449, I think that is, it's not as toy-like as you'd imagine. Because, I mean, looking at them, they, $149, maybe one would be tempted to say, but no, these are priced quite seriously, priced the same as something like a Mother 32 or a No Coast. So you've got to think of it in those terms, but also the fact that it's polyphonic, it's digital, but digital in a way that's not pretending to be anything other than that. It's granular, which has this entire flavour all by itself. And having a 400 quid granular polyphonic synthesizer is quite interesting. Not quite sure where else you'd find that other than in software. With a wavetable synth, there's a lot more competition for that. I mean, at around that sort of price, you could get a Korg Mod Wave, couldn't you? So in that regard, they do come across a little bit pricey. We're into our big reverbs these days. We love them. Can't get enough of them either in hardware or in software, or a bit of both. As you tend to find, some hardware becomes software and some software seems to become hardware. Anyway, Sinevibes are throwing their hat into the ring with something called Hollow, and it reckons it can do up to 15 minutes of reverb tails. That's one hell of a cave you put yourself in to play your music. 15 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always room for a piece of music which is a one strike and then 15 minutes of reverb tail. That's got to be a thing. But anyway, that aside, Hollow essentially brings together 24 delays in this delay network. It's got 32 filters and of course this reverb which can go on pretty much forever. And that's nice, and it's in a simple, relatively simple, quite calm looking user interface and only costs about 30 quid. So you can't say fairer than that, really. I mean, I guess it's got to compete with something like the Valhalla Supermassive, but on the other hand, this is going to give you a greater deal of depth and control and levels in which to play and excite your sounds with. It also does more than reverb. It does this delay, cascading networks of delays, as I talked about. It's got chorusing and modulations in there, a lot of filtering in order to shape and sculpt that sound. So it's not just a cave. It's being inside a creative cave with someone who's messing stuff about for you all at the same time, and that gives it a different flavour, a different way of being, and so perhaps that's worth our time. Now, we know Genki instruments through their weird wave ring thing, ring which you move your arm about and it changes parameters within over Bluetooth or into a Eurorack module. I have one. I keep really intending to spend more time with it than I have, but it's it's a useful way of putting your own arm into your otherwise very dull looking Eurorack type performance. However, they've now come up with an instrument, and this is really interesting, really nice. It's called Cosmos. So it's kind of planetarily based, orbiting satellites of modulation and sound and wave creation and bits and pieces. Well, I don't know about all of that, but as far as the front end goes, it's wonderfully put together with this very engaging, spacey, futuristic type interface. You've got a filter represented by a planet and an orbit of things going around it. You've got LFOs represented by varying orbital bodies or spirals going into and out of everywhere and nowhere. You have oscillations like sitting there like a twin star with gravitational pull pulling towards each other. What does any of this mean for the sound? Well, it's really difficult to say. It sounds a bit like a synth, doesn't it? Ultimately, the sound is all about virtual analog, 8 voices polyphony, but what really works, or while it's not trying to do anything particularly new and exciting in terms of sound generation, its interface and its ability to be playful and engaging and just to give you a different way of looking at it, whether it's through modulation or through the envelopes or through the filters, it's quite fascinating. And we need that. We need a bit of fascination, because if we're not careful, everything just ends up being a bit the same. And it's really interesting to see a company like Genki, who've been working on hardware for so long, to come in and do something really quite special within the software space. And I definitely appreciate that. I'm a sucker for a good interface. Every time, if it looks nice and actually does what it's supposed to do, then that will definitely bump me along in terms of inspiration, in terms of creativity, and wanting to stay in front of this thing to play it. And the Cosmos kind of captures that, I think, really well, while not reinventing the wheel in terms of having to understand a whole new way of doing things. It's still the same. It's still got filters, envelopes, LFOs, all the things that you're very, very familiar with, just presented in a very excellent form. Presonus seem to be on a bit of a mission to capture our hearts. Is it capturing our hearts? No, capturing our podcasting. Maybe. I don't know. They have a couple of new audio interfaces out which are similar but somehow different. One of them is in the Revelator range. Revelator seems to be a combination of hardware. There's a microphone version, so very much podcasting. USB microphone, has all this DSP and effects built in to process your voice so that you get a very good signal going through your podcasting, live streaming, that kind of vibe. But they also do an audio interface version. The 2.4, the IO 2.4 I think it is the one that we've seen already, and we've got a new one out called the IO 4.4, which sounds bigger but is actually smaller. And this one is a little square box with that knob that the other Revelator has, that gives you access to whatever it is that's on screen. So they've gone for this digital interface with a really nice looking screen, which gives you access to everything via a couple of buttons and a single knob. Not always convinced that's a great idea, but it does seem to work, and that's all right, and it looks good. My only slight fear about this is that it gives you the impression that it's going to be portable, you can be throwing it in your bag, but it does have this big knob sticking off rather proud of the front, and I worry about that a little bit. But in terms of connections, there's not a whole lot going on. You've got a single combi input for a mic and instrument, and next to that a mini jack line input, would you believe. But I think what's important about the Revelator is that it has this onboard DSP for running their fat channel stuff from Studio One, which gives you an opportunity to apply studio quality effects to the sound signal coming in before it hits your software. So this is ideal for routing straight into streaming software, straight into OBS or vMix, or straight out onto Facebook or Instagram, or all those kinds of things. And it has the ability to loop back playing software that's on your computer back through it, mix with your voice and send all that out. So it's perfectly set for that kind of podcasting, live streaming situation. But then they released another box called the Audio Box Go, which seems to be aimed at doing exactly the same thing. The Audio Box Go is a little bit more traditional in its form, but it's also very small, only has a single combi input, but does have a separate instrument input and proper normal gain type controls on the front. I guess the difference perhaps is that the Audio Box Go is as simple and cheap as you get. It's about 80 quid, and it's going to give you high quality recording, and it should have the same loopback interface as far as the software is concerned, but it doesn't have the DSP. So the Revelator, the IO44, is about twice the price, but does have this inbuilt DSP system with the digital interface on the front. So different things, I guess, doing the same thing in a different place with a different level of something or other, I suppose. Our friends at Wavefonix have another curated modular system. Now, Wavefonix make Eurorack modules, very much in the style of Moog Modular. It has a vintage classic vibe going on. I've done videos on their stuff and their first curated system that they did, the W314. Well, now they have the W614. We've talked about this a lot, actually, me and Wavefonix, and trying to get to the bottom of what it is that people want from a modular system, what really works, what doesn't. I mean, but ultimately this is down to them. All I can do is offer my opinion for what it's worth. But anyway, it's turned up and it's here. Look at this. Look at this. Ugh. Now, it's not as heavy as you might think. There we go, but it's quite heavy. So here it is. So it's a curated modular system. What do I mean by that? It means that Wavefonix have decided on a whole bunch of modules that would fit well together and have stuck them in this gorgeous oak case as a single source of modular. So maybe you're brand new to it and just want to buy a whole bunch of stuff together, or maybe you run a studio and you just need a modular voice in there to represent something, to play with something. You're just after a particular classic sound. Because there's nothing like magical in here. This is good quality, standard modular stuff. And that's what makes it interesting. So I'm going to be reviewing this very soon. I'm going to get stuck into all of its ins and outs. It does have this wonderful 8-step sequencer that I really like, as well as the dual oscillators. Cool beans, man. Really like this stuff. And the work that I've done on the case is excellent. So I'm imagining this is going to be a really enjoyable, straightforward modular experience. And I know they've been a bit worried about the pricing, because ultimately modular stuff is pricey. It gets pricey, but in my experience of Wavefonix modules, their pricing structure is great, really affordable. I mean, particularly when you compare a system like this with something like the Make Noise Shared system or the RecoSynth Techno system, or maybe the Minimod from AJH. You know, all of those are significantly more expensive than this. And I think the Wavefonix system offers you an opportunity to get a good, solid chunk of undeniably high quality modular for definitely a reasonable price. My review of it should be out in a week or two. UVI have launched number 4 of their Vintage Vault. Their Vintage Vault is a cupboard, I suppose, in which they store all of the analog synthesizers and digital synthesizers that they have captured and sampled and built into virtual instruments over the years. Version 4, it has everything. I mean, the interesting thing about the UVI collection is that there's some odd stuff in there, some stuff you probably wouldn't see in other things. You know, you've got microwaves in there, which aren't that old, synclaviers and sonic stuff, along with all your regulars like your Jupiters and your Heims and your Moogs and your bits and pieces, all the most familiar synthesizers, and it can all be yours within a single bundle. Now, if you're interested in numbers, you'll be pleased to hear that there are 14,000 presets that have taken in, I think, 255 individual machines that have been sampled. And you could possibly find something in the region of 800,000 individual samples. So this is a massive library of fantastically sampled, meticulously captured old synthesizers. Here's a quick one that I haven't quite tried out yet. This is a EuroPi. Now, EuroPi is a Eurorack module designed by someone, Alan Synthesis, which has a Raspberry Pi or something nano stuck on the back, and essentially gives you a platform on which you can create your own Eurorack module. It's got a little screen, couple of buttons, couple of knobs, CV ins and outs, that kind of thing. Off you go. Ta-da! It's all down to programming in Python or some ridiculous language you're going to have to learn in order to make it happen. One person who has put in the time to learn that sort of thing is Nick Ansell, and he sent me this, the EuroPi Consequencer. What is it? Good question. It's a drum sequencer. The idea is that it holds all sorts of drum patterns which you can dial into, which then can trigger various things. But it also has a lot of randomization built into it. I mean, he suggests that it's kind of like a mix of the Turing machine and the Visual Instruments grids. So what I liked about it and what stuck out for me is the ability to have a drum program coming out of it, running some drums, but then be able to dial in a fill, just moving a knob in order to bring in variation and randomization to that, which creates something a bit different. Because it's very easy in Eurorack to have drums which are happening. It's just happening, there's clocks going out, there's trigger sequences going out, and it's doing the same thing over and over again. It's more difficult to vary that. It's more difficult to throw in a fill or a break or something different. That requires a lot of sort of jiggery-pokery, whereas something like this, I think, has the ability to just gonna dial that in for a minute, then I'll dial it back out again. And that, for me, could be very, very, very interesting. So I'm looking forward to trying this out at some point, and I hope to do a full review. We thought this might happen 5 years ago. Teenage Engineering with their POM 400 and POM 120, what was it called? And bits and pieces, their pocket operator modular system, the big yellow one. Remember the big yellow one and the little red one? Well, those contained individual modules that you put together in order to create this modular synth. The only non-modular part of that was that the front panel was fixed. So you couldn't actually swap out a module for something else. They had to go where they went, and only that could go where the thing it went, where it could go. And you couldn't actually buy them separately anyway. That's all changed. Teenage Engineering have suddenly gone, hey, here's an idea, let's sell them individually, then you can do what the heck you like with it. I'll go, great. Now, I like to believe that this was prompted by a little company that produced a Eurorack front panel kit for the POM 400. So you could buy a whole bunch of front panels, which meant you could use the POM 400 modules individually, take them out of the big yellow thing and plug them into these lovely faceplates. Looked really, really nice. They had a little power supply adapter, and then you could plug them into a Eurorack. Brilliant idea. I think Teenage Engineering saw that and thought, that's a brilliant idea. Why don't we sell them separately? And what's happened is that they are now doing that, and the best thing about it is that they are very, very cheap, which is unexpected. Unexpected from Teenage Engineering. You expect everything to be really expensive because it nearly always is. But this time around, we're talking like 30, 40 bucks for each module, which is pretty great, and is what they should be, because it's not as if they are highly engineered or anything. They are, interestingly made, perhaps, out of plastic and bits and pieces. So that's the news, is that Teen Engineering are pushing the idea that you could do anything with this. You could wire it into a pedal and turn it into this, or you could use this for this, do some DIY, do some circuit bending, whatever you like. Hack together all these modules to make interesting, cool things, because you are cool, hip cats out there, you Teenage Engineering crowd of fans. And so that's what we're doing. And similarly, the team that put together the Eurorack pack of front panels will now also sell those separately. Here's a quick one. Our friend Gaz Williams, the angel of Eurorack, the Welsh god of synthesis and bass guitar playing, he had an idea in a drunken stupor once at a party with a bloke about getting something which would keep his cables out of the way. So in with this bloke came up with this idea, they get onto a 3D printer, printed it out, and now boom, it's available. Just like that. It's called the Cableportal, and it's a thing. He's going to send me some, but I haven't seen them yet, guys. But anyway, it's like it's a tube. It's like a tube with holes in it. The idea is that it just guides your cables around the place. I mean, people already do this with cable ties and Velcro and bits and pieces, but that's not very instantly movable. That's kind of for permanence and mapping stuffing about the place. What you want, what the Cableportal offers, is the ability to just quickly tag some stuff together, route some other cables through it so that they can stay out of the way of your knob twiddling. Very quick, very easy, very straightforward. You're not tying yourself up into anything. It's just there, and it also looks kind of funky and cool. And I think they're going to be marvellous. I think everyone should have at least 5, and it's going to be a useful way of tidying up your cabling a little bit. Nice one. Now, we saw at the end of last year, VCV Rack has thrown itself into version 2 and has produced itself a pro version and a community open source sort of free version. The pro version gives you the VST plugin version as well as the standalone, whereas the free version just gives you the standalone. Play as much as you like. Stick in loads of modules and have fun. VCV Rack. That's great. However, a few people were a little bit annoyed that the free version didn't include the VST plugin version, but hey, people have got to eat, haven't they? And it's worthwhile, I think, investing in software from time to time if it's going to help you do something that's very specific to what you are doing. If it's helping you make music, then you need to be... We shouldn't expect these things to be free. They should be paid for so that you know that the development will be ongoing, that the person who's building this thing gets some kind of reward. Now, putting that aside for one moment, there's this thing called Cardinal. Now, I don't know enough about the open source community or the ins and outs of how all this works. All I know is that there's something called Cardinal, which has taken a build of VCV Rack 2 and has wrapped it up so it can become a VST plugin for free. And this sounds on one hand awesome, fantastic, congratulations, and on the other hand, but what about all the work and programming they put into VCV Rack 2 to create the plugin version that works? And you're it feels a bit like you're taking away from sales of that, and perhaps sales are warranted, and perhaps that investment and that money is a good thing. So it just leaves me in this slightly perturbed place where I'm sure this is all fine, I'm sure it's all kosher, or is it? I don't know. I'm just not quite sure how I feel about it. Now, in the documentation on GitHub about the Cardinal wrapper or whatever it is, it also criticises a lot of VCV Rack 2 for things they either didn't do or did wrong that Cardinal say they have fixed, which in some ways is nice, and on the other hand is a bit cheeky or something. So again, it leaves me with this. So this is like you're criticising VCV Rack for doing everything wrong and not releasing the right version for free, and then you're kind of taking it, fixing it or redoing it in your own way, in that open source way that people do, and releasing it yourself for free. So in some ways you're doing everyone a good service by fixing something or making it better and releasing it for free, at the same time as undermining you know, a company that released this thing originally. I mean, Andrew at VCV Rack has been working tirelessly on this thing for years, you know, and I imagine he has to deal with all kinds of crap from people who are never happy. People are never happy with the products that you make. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, and that's slightly weird. And probably someone needs to correct me and tell me what's right and what's wrong about this way of doing things, and how perhaps it's all awesome, and I don't really know. I just have this slightly unsettled feeling about it and don't quite know what to do with that. But if you want VCV Rack as a plugin for free, then go and check out Cardinal. Hainbach has another plugin out with audio thing. This one is called Noises. The basic idea is that he's recorded all of the stuff, the garbage, the weirdness, the test equipment and the strange oscillations and tube this, that and the other, the bits of old crap that he's got knocking around his studio. He's recorded the noise that it makes, sort of all of it, different levels and layers, all of the background, all of the mechanical stuff, everything, every electrical charge, every atom and electron that passes through that gear. He has captured it in order to fuse it into different banks and ranges of sound available within Noises. The big knob in the center allows you to morph between 8 different sources of noise, and then you've got filtering for sound, shaping and sequencing and other bits and pieces in there in order to do interesting and fun things with the noise. I mean, noise can provide a backdrop to things, it can provide layering and thickening, edging, percussive noises, all sorts of stuff. Fascinating. It's endlessly fascinating what Hainbach can come up with the range of weird and wonderful gear that he has, and just his skills as a sound designer and as a musician and as a scientist and explorer of sound. Amazing stuff. Arthur Jolly over at RecoSynth is forever coming up with new and exciting ways of reinventing old synths and new synths and drum machines. And just recently he was posting pictures of a new version of his Reco drum. He's only making a handful of them, but they're kind of built into a case, a handheld case with a lid that goes on. But previously he had like a console version, a bit more like an EMS VC3 type version, you know, buttons down here, synthesizer type thing up here, which is brilliant, lovely. But I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and he was saying how difficult it is now to get hold of certain woods for cases and other bits and pieces. So he's having to adapt and change what he's doing in order to keep things flowing and keep things alive. And this is one way of doing that. So the Reco drum is now a single flat system within this case. It looks great. I mean, the case is so sort of battered and vintage looking. I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but it just looks amazing. And that colour he uses on that front panel is just out of this world. I love it. It's kind of like a petrol blue, would you call that? I don't know. My wife had an old Morris Minor that was in that colour, and it's just lovely. Anyway, carrying on with the case theme, he has the Reco mini bass, and this is built into like a good old-fashioned 80s attaché case. You know, you sort of thing you'd take onto an aeroplane to blow it up, I imagine, and a disaster movie back in those days. But within it, you've got an entire synthesizer that you open up, and it's just got the little thing here with the buttons and a sequencer. It's just simple, a good, classic synthesizer action straight from RecoSynth. Fantastic. I love it. Carry it around and off you go. And talking of sort of mini things, they've also got the Jolly Mod Mini, which is like a mini Moog Model 15 or something. That's what it is. It's a bunch of modular in a little case, which just gives you a few simple things, you know, an oscillator or two, a filter, a mixer, a VCA or two, an envelope. Off you go. Fantastic little system. I mean, Arthur continues to bring out just magnificent little bits and bobs over in Brazil. It's fantastic. I just love his work, and I can't believe how he keeps on doing it. And it keeps on being interesting. Just fantastic. And we'll have more from Arthur Jolly in unexpected places a little bit later. Here's a simple one, Voltage Vibes, which is a good name. I really enjoyed the name, Voltage Vibes. Anyway, so Voltage Vibes have created a panel, a 1U panel for your 1U Eurorack, which brings the connections from the back of the Moog Matriarch, are you still following me, and brings those out into your Eurorack. So it's a 1U panel, it sits there, it's got all the connections, all the Eurorack connections that you'd normally find on the back of the Matriarch synthesizer, and it sort of reveals those at the front. And how you connect it up is you simply take a cable out of the back of your Matriarch and plug it into the back of this module, and then you have it available directly within your Eurorack without having to shine a torch down the back to try to connect it or try to work out where those connections are. It's it's one of those things where with a lot of bits of equipment, synthesizers, keyboards in particular, they tend to put all the connections on the back when actually you kind of want them on the top so you can get better access to them, particularly if you're doing analog stuff. And this is a brilliant way of doing that. It's very simple, it's very elegant, it's just jack socket to jack socket, it's not trying to do anything clever. And it was really designed by the guy Peter Antons behind it, purely because he was building a case that he wanted to incorporate the Matriarch in front of. So Matriarch, Eurorack, you just can't get to those flipping sockets. Perfect solution for it. So if you've got a Matriarch and that's a problem for you, then you should go and check that out. But also he's thought that this is not a bad idea, generally speaking, and is going to come up with a more of a general purpose one. Just it's essentially just a way of patching stuff from the back of something to the front. The only tricky thing is that how do you get your cables in? So you've got a cable coming out of the back of your Matriarch, and you want it to go into the back of a module in your Eurorack. How are you gonna get that behind the panel then? Well, how indeed. And I wonder if there's a solution to that. I wonder. Why am I being mysterious? Oh, I don't know. I might have had an idea, right? And he thought it was a great idea, so I think we're going to do this idea together. Something around a kind of a Molten's hole that's going to allow you to patch stuff through your Eurorack and then into the back of something. It's going to be genius. We're going to sell it, and by this time next year we'll all be millionaires. Now, last year, or maybe it was, Gforce released their take on the Oberheim 8 voice. The 8 voice is this fantastic old Oberheim synthesizer, which was made up of 8 different SEMs. SEMs being the individual mono synths that Oberheim had created. They put 8 of them together and allowed you, stuck a keyboard in the front, and allowed you to play them as a single synthesizer. 8 voice synthesizer, polyphonic analog synthesizer, but the special thing being that each of the voices was individually editable and essentially acted as a synthesizer by itself. And Gforce emulated this and released it, and we thought, that's brilliant. Oh, Mac only? Oh, who does that? Who does that anymore? 20 years ago, all right, fair enough, that happened quite a bit. These days, bit of an oversight. Anyway, version 2 has just come along, and it is also PC Windows compatible, which is awesome. I've done a bit of a review demo, so if you're interested in that, do go and check that out, because I think I did a half decent job of showing what it can do on Windows and on a Surface Pro 8 with a bit of touch control and all that kind of thing. But what's special about version 2 is that they showed it to Tom Oberheim, and he says, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. He's looked at plenty over the years. And this is the first one where he thinks, yeah, that really does sound like how the hardware sounds. So with this version 2, they've tweaked it a bit. They've introduced this vintage knob, which kind of dials in the discrepancies between each of the SEMs. Because the point is that these were not the same. None of them were the same. And so when you're playing them together, each one should be sounding slightly different. And with this vintage knob, you kind of push them away from each other in terms of how they sound. And that creates this character, this liveliness that's quite extraordinary. And I have to say that playing with it, it does sound totally amazing. Really, really does. I mean, stunningly so. I mean, of course, it's just an analog synthesizer. We've got plenty of software versions of those, plenty of software emulations, but playing it, it just sounds great. Warm, gooey, lovely. And I love the fact that you can individually edit these voices, because that becomes a whole playful sound design tool within itself. You're not just synthesizing, because with most polyphonic synthesizers you turn the filter and it filters everything. With this, the filter is only on that particular voice. So you're holding a chord, you can filter each note separately and individually. Now there are other synths that do that, so I've been told, since making my other video where I suggested perhaps it was unique, but it just works really well in this context. And I've thoroughly enjoyed playing with it. I would recommend you go and check it out too. I came across a couple of new Cosmo-y things from Look Mum No Computer the other day. One of them is a gigantic mega modulation mega station, I think it's called, which is essentially a quad LFO, so a whole bunch of LFOs stuck behind one enormous panel. Because that's the thing about the Cosmo format, it's enormous. Well, at least in what we're used to in terms of Eurorack, because Cosmo modules are about this tall. Yeah, this is 3U. Cosmo are more like 5U, not quite 5U, or it's called metric 5U. But anyway, they're huge. The idea behind the Cosmo format is so that you can play on stage with a modular synthesizer without having to go, oh, I can't really see what I'm doing because of these tiny little knobs in Eurorack. It takes the Eurorack format and just blows it up so you can grab knobs and turn them and plug things in without having to worry about it. I think it's total genius. I've been really into it for a couple of years, except for the fact I just can't seem to find the time to build them, because Sam Battle at Look Mum No Computer, who releases them as PCB and panel sets, and you've got to go and find the components in order to wire the whole thing together, which is brilliant. I'm into that. I just don't seem to be able to find the time, but I really would like to. So I've got a whole load of his panels and PCBs ready to go as soon as I can find the time to focus on it. Anyway, what am I talking about? So yeah, a big quad LFO, which just looks amazing. But the other thing he produced was a keyboard sequencer. Again, it seems to be massive. Well, but it probably fit in this gap here. And it's got 2 rows of 8 knobs that you can turn into either 2 8-step sequencers or 1 16-step sequencer. And they've also got capacitive touch plates on the bottom, so you can play the notes like a keyboard. Fantastic. If you ever fancy getting into a crazy bit of DIY synthesis, then I would thoroughly recommend the Cosmo format from Look Mum No Computer. Fantastic. I mean, the front panels themselves are works of art. It just looks so crunchy and crazy and awesome, and you could build a whole wall of this stuff and it would just be amazing. So yeah, go check that out. Now, you know I mentioned Arthur Jolly earlier and said there was something else later. Well, this is the later bit, which will seem strange when I say that Kia, the car manufacturer, have released a virtual instrument. What does that have to do with Arthur Jolly? Well, I'm not entirely sure. As much as I understand it, Kia, manufacturer of cars, have manufactured electric cars and have now turned themselves into kind of eco-warrior stroke Zen Buddhists of some kind, where they're getting together with nature and movement, and they're trying to rebuild the idea that we're not really driving cars, we're more of experiencing motion and movement or something. Anyway, the marketing department's gone wild with this whole thing and is trying to explain music to us in fantastic kind of car marketing speak. It's just a joy to behold, I have to say. But anyway, within all of this, because they've produced some electric cars, they need to create noises for them. You know, I mean, I don't know if you know that Richard Devine created the sound of the Tesla, I think it is, or was it an Aston Martin? I don't remember. Anyway, when you've got an electric car, it doesn't make any sound often, so you have to sort of add sound to it. But then they also wanted to create sounds for the internal operating system and the way things work, so that when you press a button it goes or bing or something. So in order to do that, they got in a bunch of synths, and they went to Arthur Jolly and said, could you build us a couple of interesting synths? And he said, there you go. And so they've been playing with those, and they've worked those into this virtual instrument along with a whole bunch of environments. So environmental sound, water, pink noise, I suppose they're calling it, forests, wind, thunder, birds, flocks of stuff, sheep, I don't know, all that kind of stuff. They've built that in to this synthesizer interface that contains samples of Arthur Jolly's stuff along with some effects and this bedrock, this background of environmental sounds. It's quite fascinating. It's called Move.ment with a dot in between for no suitably explored reason, and it's free, so go and check it out. I mean, I've got every faith in Arthur Jolly's ability to come up with interesting stuff, so it is interesting in there, and for no other reason, if you need some nature sounds, then it's a good source of those all by itself. And finally, just to mention the Synths EDU DIY thing, you may be aware from previously that Synths, along with a designer called Moritz Klein, have put together this series of Eurorack modules, which are designed to be educational. They're designed to help you learn about circuit design, to help you learn about modular and how synthesis works while building a modular synthesizer. It's totally brilliant. It's really affordable. It comes out sort of once a month, and slowly over time puts together this 9-module modular system, including the power supply and case. It's fantastic. I've been following it and I've been making videos on it. The angle I've gone for on this is the idea that I will live stream the entire thing. So I'll live stream the reading of the excellent manuals that Moritz has supplied with them, which teach you all about the circuit design. You then build it out on a breadboard. So we do all of this. We do it live. You can build along with me is the idea. We go through all of that and try to learn and grasp what it is the module's all about. And then, after we've completed all that, we'll then solder it together to have a finished module and test it to make sure that it works. Now, this is a brilliant idea. I still maintain it's a brilliant idea. It just takes a long time. I mean, the first one, the VCO, was probably about 8 hours or something of live streams. I mean, a focused live stream of a couple of hours on the breadboard, and then I did a few hours here and there in between trying to work a few things out because I got a bit stuck, and then a couple of hours on the soldering. And when the dual VCA come along, I've done a couple of hours on the breadboard, a couple of hours on the soldering. And hopefully it's not going to keep ballooning into anything more than that, trying to keep it contained, otherwise it just gets too much. But it's been fascinating. And if you have any interest in circuit design or learning more about the electronics, then I thoroughly recommend getting hold of the kits as they emerge and joining me on a live stream as we build them together. It's been brilliant. I've totally loved it. It's been frustrating at times and hard. It's really a challenge. They've not made it like, stupidly simple. It's still hard. These are still concepts you have to try to grasp and learn. But Moritz has done a great job at explaining it. And I think in some ways I do a great job of showing quite where bits are working and not working, and demonstrate to someone's genuine and honest attempt to try to learn this stuff. Anyway, coming up shortly at the end of this month is the case and power supply. It should be available from RecoSynth about now. And if you get hold of one, I'll be doing a build-along video on it in about a week, I should think. Yeah, probably a week. And this is not going to be a big build particularly because it's actually much simpler than putting together a module. So that'll be good. We'll do that and then we'll continue doing it month after month for as long as people will let me do it. I think is the plan. And there's just time to squeeze in a little bumper package of Behringer bits, which is fun. Kicking off with the UBXA desktop. UBXA is their clone of the Oberheim OBXA, of course. We've been waiting for that for a long time. They're still waiting on chips. Poor old Behringer have had a rough old time with the chip shortage. They've not been able to get anything out. But apparently, while they've been sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for these things to arrive, they decided to bring the UBXA down to a more manageable desktop size and have revealed a few prototype pictures of what that's going to look like. It looks like you imagine it would look like, I think. But they've done more than that. Not with that particular product, but as they've been sitting around, they've been spitballing new ideas and exciting new form factors, and have come up with a couple of things that they showed on Facebook just today that just well, let me show you. First of all, there's the Pro VS. Now, this, of course, is a take on the Sequential Prophet VS, which was, I think, Sequential's last synthesizer before they went bust back in the 1980s. And the idea is that it's a vector synthesizer, so you have 4 waveforms that you move between with a joystick, and then you funnel that through the usual filters and other bits of subtractive bits and bobs that go on in a synthesizer. And Behringer have taken hold of that idea, and rather than sticking it into a synthesizer of some kind, they've put it into a squat little weird, funny looking form factor. I mean, I described it on Gear News as simply just being ugly, because that's what it is. It's weird. It's simply ugly. You look at it and you just go, oh. There's no like, oh wow, that looks fascinating. Oh, it's a Prophet VS, fantastic. No, it's like, oh, what the heck is this? And then, oh, it's a Pro V. Oh, it's got, oh, okay, it's got some sounds in. That's nice. But oh, how, there's something about the balance between the hardware front panel bit and that weeny little keyboard that's just unpleasant. Can't exactly put my finger on it, but I mean, somebody described it as being like those cakes people make of synthesizers. You know, people bake a cake that looks a bit like a synthesizer. That's what it looks like. Well, it looks like a cake version of itself somehow. But I mean, does it matter? Oh, I don't know. But you know, Behringer give you one line of description. Hey, we've just come up with this thing. Isn't it awesome? And a picture. And so you can only go on what your first impression is, really. And mine was one of absolute horror. But then they followed that up. They followed that up with the JP4000. Now, the funny thing is that it is very, very similar in form. Obviously, they've been shopping at Modular Electronics and have been playing with the Sculpt and the Craft Synth and things like that, and have gone, well, that's a really nice little form factor. Let's do that. And that's sort of what they've done. But with the JP4000, there's something about it which is just bang on the money. It's somehow cute. It's somehow, the proportions are right. It's better. It looks like a sort of a wee little novelty mini synth. And pretty cool, I think. And I mean, the best thing about it is it's going to be $49. $49. That's nothing. That's the price of an Xbox game. Hardly even that. It's a couple of bits of vinyl. Flipping heck. And that supposedly is a clone of the Roland JP8000. JP8000. Massive hybrid virtual analog synthesizer full of sliders and buttons and stuff, and was is a classic of its time. And they've taken that and reduced it down into this itty bitty little synthesizer, which I have to say is very cute. So it's weird how they've released these two things or announced these two things, which are very similar in form, but one is just pug ugly, and the other one's going to be a bit of a cult classic, I think. Funny. Design, the look of something, it's important. It's what we react to. I don't think you can be impassionate about these sorts of things and just go, oh, well, it's a synthesizer, and therefore I'm only interested in the internal workings of what it sounds like. Yeah, all right, but as a musical instrument, personally, I feel that how something looks, how something feels in the hand, how you can touch it or control it, those things are vital, important. They absolutely speak into your enjoyableness, and how well you enjoy an instrument and how interesting it is to play. That's how I feel about it. If it's just purely the sound that you're interested in, then that's fine. But let us who feel, who have emotions, damn it. Sorry, that was just the Behringer police. Sorry about that. No, apparently these are gorgeous. They're just lovely. I mean, amazing. Super things. Super fabulous. So there you are. That's this month's bits and pieces all stuck together. As I say, for next month, I hope to have a new, revisited and exciting front end to these videos and finish to the videos too. And that's really, I'm looking forward to finding the time to put that together. But otherwise, coming up, I've got a review video of this fella here, which is fantastic. I've got a whole bunch of different modules to do. I've got some Neural Labs soldering to do, some Frequency Central kits to build. Now, this fella just turned up in the post, which is awesome. So I'm going to put some batteries in that, take it outside and see if I can make some music. And also, I just heard this morning that the last module from the Behringer 2500 series has just been dispatched to me. So I think I will have the full kit, and I'll start making a video on it or something. Because I've seen it through this far, damn it. I will see it to the bitter end, and I'll make some bloody videos about it, and it will be awesome. I mean, can you imagine? It's an ARP 2500. I've got it sitting over there. But, you know, without the last module, just waiting for that last mix module thingy. Amazing. You know, I'm quite excited about powering it up again and seeing if the whole thing hangs together as a system. Very exciting. So lots more things to come, lots of things in the channel, always more stuff. Lots more Surface Pro 8 stuff. I'm just currently in the middle of testing that out, doing some performance testing on it, and it is working beautifully without tweaking it. So that's going to be interesting. So I'm going to put that a whole load of comparisons together, performance testing. I'll compare it to the Surface Pro 7. All of that's going to be coming up very soon, probably next week, I should think. So that'll do. I hope that's been fun and interesting. Please do subscribe. Please hit the notification thing. And if you're feeling really daring, come and join me on Patreon. I have plans for Patreon for 2022 where there are going to be all sorts of exclusive and exciting, wondrous things happening in there. All you got to do is throw us a couple of quid every month. Easy. And that supports all of this stuff that I'm attempting to do and will just help me along the way. That would be really useful. So that's good. Take care of yourselves out there, and in the meantime, go and make some tunes.